Well, I finally decided that I'm going to retire this old jigsaw that I've had. I just wanted to update it to a more modern scroll saw. Now, this saw, I got it on my 7th birthday in 1954 from my mom and dad. And I've had it ever since, and I've used it all these years. And this saw was originally made by the Toolcraft Company, and it was under the name of Power Tools. Let me add a light to the subject here. And this same company a year later started making them also under the name of Dara James and Powercraft for awards. And there was a couple more models they made at the same name, same machine. But this one was called Power Tools. And it's back then they were called a jigsaw instead of a scroll saw. Anyway, when Dad gave this to me, Dad and Mom, he had it mounted on a 2x8. It wasn't on this table. And the 2x8 stuck out the back there about 11 and a half, 12 inches. And the motor was mounted behind the saw. And I used this, I took that apart years ago when I found this old table in a house where I was working in later years. Now this table might make a good stand for that saw, so I brought it home. I took the motor off, and underneath here, there's the motor that Dad had put on it. And that was mounted to that 2x8. And it appears to be an old motor from a wash machine or something. And he welded it to that 1/4 inch plate. It's about 4 inches wide, about 11 inches long. And he had that motor mounted behind the saw with a longer belt on it. So it's the same motor. It still runs fine. So I'm not sure what year it was when I took it off that old board, which was an old used board. In fact, it was old dirty old oil-soaked board that he got somewhere off from our farm. But when I mounted on this table, it actually worked out quite well. So that's about 65, 66 years I've had this saw and been using it. And I've used it quite a bit through the years, especially the last 4 or 5 years since I started the woodworking when I retired. And originally, well, the worst thing, the problem with it is it works fine. It's only a 12-inch throat. But the main thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't have enough blade tension. It's only got a coil spring up in the head here. And this blade clamp is nothing but a set screw, an Allen screw. You got to put that Allen wrench in there to take the blade out each time. And let me tell you, when I was 7 years old, that didn't work very well. I had a hard time learning how to do that, because you gotta loosen this, and then, well, I need to mount this camera on a tripod, and then I'll show you how that all works. Let me do that quick. Okay, I'm back. Let's try it out here. So the way it is, the blade's in here now. You really can't use very fine blades. There's not enough tension. So you got to use the heavier blades. This one here is a 9-tooth. And that's about as fine a blade as you want to put in it. And it had a guide down here, which I really never used, but I think I did when I was really young, when I would learn how to run it. But it helps hold the wood down, obviously. And it also has a little notch in here to keep the blade from bending backwards, which works. Anyway, let's turn it on here and make a little cut with it and show you how it works. Here we go. Yeah, that's about all to that. But it cuts okay, it cuts nice. But here was the problem when I was 7 years old. I couldn't handle this, so every time I wanted to cut an inside part, I had to have Dad come over and do this for me. And I don't know if he thought about that when he gave it to me, but so every inside cut he had to come and loosen this set screw. And you got to remember, this was sitting on the floor when I used to use it as a kid, because it didn't have a table or a stand. It was on that 2x8, which was just sitting on the floor in the house. So anyway, first he had to loosen this Allen screw, and that lets the spring retract the top clamp. And then underneath, at the time I could use the pulley, but you have to run the blade down. And now this guide is in the way, so what you have to do is either raise it like so, which I didn't use it, so I put it to the back like that. Anyway, and then you can slip your wood down the hole. And then we run the blade back up into as high as it goes to the top. Now you got to have this Allen wrench. You got to pull down on it about a ½ inch. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise the spring will bottom out. Oops. As you can tell, it's difficult to do now. Find a hole for the Allen wrench. Oh, let's see here. Well, it's just not the easiest thing to do. Okay, there we got it pulled down about a ½ inch. Tighten that back up. Something like that. You can see how much work that is for a 7-year-old kid. But anyway, there we go. Now we got it. Now, oops, now something's not right there. Not sure what I did wrong. Whoa, I think I pulled it down too far. See, now there was a problem. That's more than it's traveled for the spring. So I gotta loosen it and let it up just a little bit. And I'll try this again. Okay. There we go. You can see when you're a 7-year-old kid, that didn't work well. To this day, it's hard to use. Make sure it's clear up. We loosen this again. And run the blade all the way down. There we go. Now, run the blade back up. All the way to the top. Has to make sure it's at the top of its stroke. Then I gotta get this Allen wrench back in the hole. Now that I'm old, it's hard to see the thing. Pull it down a little. Not so much this time. Tighten the Allen. There we go. Anyway, that's why I wanted a new saw. Now, another neat thing, when I got this, I got it from my birthday, which was in October 1954, so it came with some patterns that Mom and Dad gave me too at the same time. And in the book, the last page in the pattern book was a birdhouse. I thought, oh boy, I gotta make that. Well, it had, I think it had 16 inside cutouts to do, which meant a lot of them blade changes. So I proceeded to start on it. And of course, every time I needed to do another inside hole, I had to have Dad come over and get down on the floor and redo the blade for me. Cut one cut out, Dad, and he'd be back to do it again. Another cut out, Dad. And I remember he had a TV there. He was watching TV and reading the paper. So he got interrupted a lot to do that. But it took me a long time to finish this birdhouse. The idea was, from October when I got this, I planned on making 2 of those birdhouses for my grandparents for Christmas. So I started on them, and of course I had a lot of other things I'd like to do at that time in my life, and learning all kinds of new things. So Mom had to keep after me all the time. You better get that done. Christmas is getting close. Christmas is getting close. Well, I'd work on it a little and then get tired, and days would go by. And right before Christmas, I got them painted, a birdhouse painted, and gave them to the grandparents. The grandparents on Dad's side, he put his birdhouse up on a pole right away. And I thought, oh, that's pretty neat. I was really proud of that. And Mom's side, Grandpa decided not to put it outside. He decided it wouldn't last out in the rain because it's made out of plywood, 1/4-inch plywood. And he says, I'm going to store this away so I can remember it for the rest of my life. Oh, well, that's okay. I was a little disappointed, but so all them years, 65 years ago, 66, I still have that birdhouse. I got it back. It's still the way it was when I made it. After Grandpa saved it all them years, I just really couldn't believe it was still there. Anyway, I'm going to take you over and show you that birdhouse. And also the project that I made the next year for their birthday. I'll be back in a short. Well, let's go to the other side of the shop so I can show you the project that I made for the grandparents in 1954. And here it is. There is the very birdhouse I made when I was 7 years old for my grandparents. I made 2 of them. Mom and Dad saved this all those years. Now, it wasn't on that stand. I put that on there recently just so I could display it. But you can see I had all these internal cutouts to do, which now is no big deal, but then at 7 years old, that was a big deal. I had the 4 holes to cut. And these here too, for a 7-year-old, they're a little tricky. But it's all just nailed together. There's no glue. And it's a wonder I got it nailed. I had a little trouble with the wood splitting here and there. Not too bad, but it was quite a project for me at 7. So, but it's still not too bad a shape for all them years sitting. Well, I suppose it was in their attic. I don't really know. But anyway, when Grandpa died, my grandma moved off the farm, sold the farm, moved into town, and bought a new house, or a different house. She packed this up and moved it along to her new house. And I didn't know that at the time, but then when Grandma died, about 15 so years later, Mom got all the stuff that she had, and Mom comes home with this birdhouse. Grandma had stored too. She wanted to know if I wanted it back, and I said, well, sure. So there it is. And there next to it is the next project I made for the next year, 1955. It was these leaves. Kind of, I think it's a maple leaf, I think it's supposed to be. But they were pear. I only have one left. I think I threw the other one away, and I shouldn't have done that. But I gave both grandparents a pair of these. There's a right and a left. And Mom's parents, they hung them on the house in their farmhouse first, on the wall in their house. And same thing, when Grandpa died, and then Grandma moved into town, she moved these with it. And I remember them hanging in her new kitchen. So she kept them hung up all them years. Of course, when she died, Mom brought them home also. So I still have them. And they're fairly simple to make, but I would have been 8 years old on this. But anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting that I still have these after all them years. So that's a 66-year-old birdhouse. So that's about the end of it. You guys spend enough time on this now. So we'll see you all later. Have a good one. Bye.